Howdy y'all, I'm Sohan, I'm here at West China Tea, and I'm here with our first ever guest on Gong Fu Tea chA, Theresa from Bom Bakeshop, and we'll intro her in just a second. Today we're bringing her in to talk about flavors and fragrances. A lot of times people are always asking me about words that they can use to articulate what it is they're tasting when they're tasting tea. And that's honestly not super my forte. I don't necessarily have a background in cuisine or culinary arts. I just like tea a lot. And in China, the discussion about the taste of tea is a little bit more limited than it is here for things like wine and whiskey and just food in general. And so we brought Theresa in because she is a culinary master and produces amazing food that has been our guest at our Lunar New Year's events for the past couple of years, and she always sells out of everything really fast. So Theresa, if you want to give us a little introduction to you and your background.
Well, thank you. Theresa Guan, and my husband and I had started Bom Bakeshop a little over 4 years ago. Yeah, and right here in Austin, Texas, we make or specialize in mochi donuts. But don't be fooled, it is actually a donut with 7 ingredients, and the recipe is from the Goryeo dynasty, so 935 AD. And I feel like it goes really great with tea.
Awesome.
So happy to be here.
Super excited. I first of all, that was news to me. We just had a conversation before the show started, filming started. It was great. And I was like, before we actually taste these teas, I love that you've made that historical connection with, this isn't just this like trendy thing that Instagram people invented, the mochi donut. There's actually a historical precedent for this that has nothing to do with Western food culture.
Right.
It's completely indigenous to Korea.
Completely.
And I didn't know that. That was news to me, but it makes a lot of sense because the lead gets buried a lot of the time, when it comes to modern food culture and very trendy, viral food culture.
Yeah.
A lot of these things really are copied and pasted from long-standing culinary traditions of different cultures, and that really can get erased.
Exactly. Yes. And like family recipes that get passed down, even the culture around it. And so, I love that we're here to be able to talk about that connection with food and drink, culture, conversation. So I'm excited.
And the Goryeo dynasty, Korea, which is part of your heritage.
Yes. So our mochi donut recipe is actually based on a recipe from the royal household of the Goryeo dynasty during the Three Kingdoms period in Korea. So this was before Joseon or modern day Korea. And I love that the research behind a treat that I had since childhood led me back to something so deep. I mean, 935 AD, it's crazy to think about. And I heard there's actually only one place and that's actually on the border of Korea, so the Koreas, that makes it the same way, because Kaesong was the capital of Goryeo.
And this is right in the middle. Yeah. It's in North Korea.
Well, technically it's North Korea, but right on the border.
Wow.
Yeah, and so people always try to replicate it, but they don't make it the same way. Because, commercial things, a lot of people don't use the original elements. But I grew up with simple ingredients that make incredible things.
Yeah.
And so that's, I'm so happy to be able to share that. But you're right. I feel like through history and time and even trade, right, that in a lot of tea was through trade, like spread to the world, right?
Absolutely.
And then you lose the story, you lose the history behind it. And sometimes it really does kind of morph into its own thing, right? Like it's not the original 7 ingredients that they used to make. And now it's like modern, we call it, and the funny thing is mochi donut, that was coined in Japan. And the Japanese version was made in the 20th century. Right? But we call it a mochi donut because that's the trending title and the branding around it. However, our donut is comes from something much deeper.
Japanese culturally is always first to market in the West. As far as any Pan-Asian concept that we have, we usually will use the Japanese word for it, even if it doesn't originate in Japan, because that's our closest trading partner. They have this huge cultural export. So does Korea now, but Japan has for a long time.
The interesting thing is, and I've done so many different career fields, but one of them was working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Korea.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
I have a lot of different hats that I've worn. And what I learned during that time was, it was just after the beginning of just kind of the policies around foreign policies, etc. But soft power foreign policy, Japan after World War II really began to export their culture for soft power to regain palatability, acceptability in the West. But yes, they really laid down maybe even a roadmap for how to share the culture. But then now, yes, we use so many Japanese words, right?
Zen.
Zen, right, exactly. And then that was actually all part of a foreign policy movement for soft power.
And it is for Korea now, too.
Yes, South Korea has modeled after Japan. And now Korea is like all the thing, right? So funny because being Korean wasn't even, when I was young, it was, are you Chinese, Japanese, and Korean wasn't even
are we didn't know about Korea.
I wasn't even an option, and now it's like cool and trending and so fun and healing. Healing that cool. People are interested in Asian culture, my Korean culture, even for me to reintegrate with it. Because I feel like I've always had it in two different buckets. Right? So it's so exciting to have food be that entree into the conversation about culture.
Absolutely. And something that we were talking about before we started filming was just as Asian Americans and the degree to which the depth of the emotional bonding that can be achieved between people just by even talking about food.
Yes.
And how you really, to have access to that depth of being moved by food, beyond just a product or an experience, but something like really central to your identity.
Yes.
You have to grow up eating these things, and that's this search for authenticity. Like that's the 100%. Authenticity with the mochi donut is actually not this trendy thing. It's this ancient thing, and there is that authenticity. And you talked about kind of the Asian foodie community and the search for authenticity and why that's so important. And I think for me during that conversation, my epiphany was that if you don't have a strong connection to food culturally growing up, you're not going to understand why food can be so meaningful or so important. And I think there's a depth that connects people to food in general when they have that, when it's not just like chicken tenders and macaroni and cheese in the microwave, you know what I mean?
Which
is fine, but it's not going to generate that kind of emotional depth as something that your grandma or your auntie or your mom or your dad cooked for you, right? And something that their parents cooked for them, something that's been passed down. It's not a product, it's a technology that's been passed down in an unbroken tradition for maybe hundreds of years. Who knows?
It is a connection to our past. It's a connection to our culture, but also because, it's specifically food and drink, a lot of Asian cultures, instead of saying, hey, what's up? Or hi, how are you? It's, did you eat?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, in Chinese, exactly.
Yeah,
it is.
exactly. Yeah. And that's how central it is. Like it is the very first thing you check in with someone. Did you eat? Because, to be whole together, you also need to be whole.
Right.
And if you are lacking, let me help you.
Like I will literally feed you. If you haven't eaten, then I'm going to offer you food for real. I might even cook for you.
Exactly, right. And it's communion, right? I love that chord, especially through Asian cultures. Did you, and a lot of that is because there's a lot of history of starvation and not having those resources, war, etc. But that being so core and central, I feel like just even beginning the conversation around did you eat, like there's like a understanding, like, oh, we're going there. We're going
absolutely.
There.
Absolutely. So when it comes to tea, people are always asking me about the taste and smells. And I actually want to bring it back around to what we're already talking about, which is that in the West, where maybe there isn't as much connection culturally for a lot of people to their foods of their cultures, you know what I mean? Or even feeling associated with any culture at all, you know? There's this kind of chasing the dragon as far as what's the best, like as in like what has the most value, like what's the best experience that I can have, and this kind of assumption that it's buyable, it can be bought,
there you go,
and that it will cost more money if it's better, it'll be more valuable, and that probably, and I guess this lecture summers, it should have good marketing too. They should have good branding, you know what I mean? Good marketing, because there's this.
If it's good.
If it's really good, then obviously they've got a really good graphic designer.
So, right.
And I think that, and a lot of when you look at, I'm about to film my whiskey podcast after this, like literally right after this, and drink whiskey. But in whiskey culture, which I'm now like kind of like tangentially a part of, and a lot of other like coffee culture, beer culture, wine culture, there's a strong emphasis on the taste and the smells. They've got a flavor wheel,
100%.
And they're getting really articulate and precise and creative with the way that they describe the taste and the smell. And I realize that's like that for those things in the mind of the market, in the way that these things are portrayed in the market, the value of those things is in the taste and smell. Whereas there actually, for everyone, is so much more value to food and drink than the taste and the smell. In tea, we talk about the chA of the tea, and that's mostly what tea is. Mostly tea is good because it has good chA, it makes you feel good. But that's not part of the discourse for wine, it's not part of the discourse for whiskey, it's not part of the discourse for coffee either. You never hear people talking about the way that it makes them feel, you only hear them talking about the taste and the smell. And so
that's so interesting, Well, if I could just make a tangential comment, is that I love that you're going into whiskey, because I actually love single malt whiskey and toured a lot of distilleries when I was in Scotland. And the way they talk about it, and I feel like this actually may be more of a parallel than wine to tea, is the way they talk about it is actually the presence of what the ingredients are. For example, I love peaty, Highlands, like Upper Highlands, single malt Scotch, and they talk about the presence of how much peat you're putting in, how much this, where the water is from, what that water mineral content is like, etc., which I feel like lends itself really well to tea.
It does, absolutely. It's 100% of it. What makes the tea good is hugely where it's grown, the water it was grown in, the water, the sunlight, the air, the earth, everything like that. And we get super deep with that. And you're right, something very singular like single malt Scotch, that people, it's just the one thing. There's you distill it and you have this one thing, and you're not adding anything to it. You're not even adding ice to it. Maybe add some water, but you're not flavoring it. And tea's the same way. There's no salt, there's no sugar, there's no
the purity
there's no fat
around it, right?
And that's when we do see people getting really into those factors that make the thing good what it is. You do see that in things like coffee and whiskey and things that are very singular tea. And I'm excited to hear your thoughts on these teas because of your background with food and with flavor, and obviously you've given like so much like deep thought, just getting your perspective on these. We're gonna start with a green tea.
Okay.
And also we're drinking the tea cold today, or is it cold or is it lukewarm? It's lukewarm.
Lukewarm.
Yeah. Which we don't usually do, so it'll be interesting. We'll get different notes now than we would if it was warm. It's kind of neat. I didn't make the tea today. So this is, I don't know, should we talk about the tea first? Or just taste them first, and then I'll talk about it afterwards.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah. So just to describe, it's the clarity of it. I love it. It's already giving me, oh yeah, I can see part of the sediment in it. Yeah.
That is.
It's like a champagne color.
Yeah, it is like a champagne color, like a greenish champagne. That sediment is the white hairs that are on the tea buds, and I'll tell you this about this tea: the Mao and Su Mao Feng means hairy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
that is so fascinating.
And so those are tiny little white hairs that are the trichomes on the surface of the buds of the tea leaf that are there to protect them from insects.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
and they also have a lot of the fragrance and the oils of the tea are concentrated in those, and the presence of those is an indicator of tea being good quality tea, especially early spring good quality tea. So amazing. Here, I'll give us each a whole, I'll leave a little bit for reference.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. You don't have to slurp when it's cold.
That's true.
But you still can. It still makes it taste better.
It does, actually, because you're aerating it.
Another great Asian thing to do, slurping stuff.
Slurp. It's not rude.
It's not rude. Why would it be rude?
Yeah.
You know? Some people got sensory issues. I think that's what it is.
Well, it's also, I think, cultural. In the West, it's rude to smack and slurp and make noise even with your utensils, right? And whereas, like, and my husband actually, who was born and raised in Korea, and he and I have very different eating cultural etiquette, I guess you can say. So I find myself being like, please don't smack your, and he's like, but it tastes better. But I kind of am like, actually, when we slurp, even wine, you like swish it around. You can actually taste it better. Yeah. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So maybe it's you said it was the hairs, the hairs, but it almost has this, from just, if we're going to start talking about like with the texture, it almost has like a syrupy, like a thicker syrupy, and I wonder if it's from that.
I do associate that viscosity with buddy teas, like Silver Needle, which is all buds, is very thick like that, and I really do think it is that.
But like, I don't think I notice it when it's warm as much.
It would be thinner when it's warm, because that's how liquids are.
Okay. What are you getting?
No, you go first.
Me first. Oh yeah, you're like the tea connoisseur.
I'm not as good at it, probably, almost definitely.
So the one I'm going to describe so we were just talking right before about how, it's so important to know where the food comes from, but it's like where the water is from. Even like the region where things are grown, it's the nutrients that are native in the plants adjacent to what's being grown with the tea are going to affect it, but also the heat, the light, etc. So this one, it actually has a very bean-like undertone to me, right? So it's not earthy like puer tea, but like it has this almost sweet yet with a little bit of body, but it has this very comforting bean texture / taste to it that I really enjoy, and it's also playful. I feel like it's playful because you're supposed to taste on different parts of your tongue because that's where all the different senses are, and it definitely rolls towards more of a sweet tea. Which
yeah, it is sweet. It's definitely cool. Yeah, I get the beanness, and when it's hot, people tend to notice a fried chicken note in this.
Wait. I mean, you can't get the fragrance as much when it's colder, but okay, I'll look up.
You get it a lot on the exhale after you swallow. It's definitely stronger when it's hot.
Yes.
But I can see...
so that time, because I can feel it's coating my tongue. That time I actually got like I had this like what came to mind. I'm a very visual person too. Is that I actually got green, like the leafy notes to it this time, which wasn't what I got the first time. So. Oh, I see what they're saying about fried chicken. That's so interesting.
I mean, who doesn't like fried chicken?
Who doesn't like fried chicken? But I think that is almost, so this time it wasn't like what I imagined was green, was more almost like a grain, like that grain notes of of not wheat, not like the standard wheats and oatmeals and things like that, but like a different kind of grain, maybe like even couscousy. So it's a little bit more nutty, than like
People definitely toasted grain. So now translating this into like vocabulary list words that people use for tea. Instead of saying bean or fried chicken, people be like, it's umami. You know what I mean?
Umami.
People will be like, okay, there's grassiness, that leafiness, Or like, well, there's like a tea is leaves, it's green, Okay, so people say grassiness, and there's words, and it's great when those words are useful and they help you to taste something. Like fried chicken is a taste note. It's a very evocative note. It's like you might not notice that in the tea until you say it.
Right.
And so insofar as these things are tools to help people have a more satisfying experience getting down with these flavors and these notes and kind of discovering more. I mean, because it's like when you look at an abstract image and or you look at a cloud and someone's like, oh, I see a dog, and then you see the dog, and then you can't unsee the dog.
Right.
You know, the same is true of having these taste notes. When someone says like, you know, fried chicken or bean or seaweed, although it's not a very seaweedy tea, but like it's sweet, it's umami, it's grassy, and
well, what's interesting about these flavors too, and I think it's good to sort of, I like comparing flavors to foods that people are familiar with or maybe not familiar with, partly because we might say grassy, but grassy is a really broad range. So is earthy, right? And people's taste buds have certain receptors that are on and some that are off. Like for example, you know, like some people don't like cilantro because it tastes like soap. But it's like a less than 1% population that apparently has this receptor that makes it taste like soap. So I think too, one of the things about flavor that can be challenging or maybe intimidating to people is that they may not get it. They may not get the note that everyone else is like, ooh, and they're like, I don't taste that. And it's okay. It's okay.
Exactly.
It may not be in your flavor receptors, but also you may have never been introduced to a flavor and associated with that word.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Not having the association, not having the awareness, not having like the fine tune, not having the experience. And I think that one of the reasons why I don't emphasize that aspect as much at the tea house, I'm actually a lot more like you. You're talking a lot more about the chai. When you're saying it's playful, that's the chai of the tea. That's why we drink it. That's why we
I know. It's just like, well, how can I not talk about that?
That's what makes it.
But that is part of flavor for us.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. When you move beyond this sensory, five senses paradigm, that is really the foundation of like when you look at these like connoisseurship cultures in the West, like whiskey and stuff, where you really are focused on those five senses, especially taste and smell, color, you know, things like that. There's this kind of, you know, I think because that aspect is so subjective and so personal, and you can't package it. It's not physical. You have to have some kind of basis for connection. And you can't guarantee that the person consuming the thing is going to have that, and so you just leave it out of the discussion. But that part of the thing is what makes it good. Beyond the taste and the smell. There's people, you know, who have powerful associations with, like, let's say there's a whiskey that like your grandpa always drank, and it was your first whiskey you ever drank, and he would drink it with you, and there's something, and it's not an expensive whiskey, but there's something that drinking that whiskey will do for you emotionally and spiritually, even memories that you know, a top shelf bottle, you know, a $200 bottle of whiskey wouldn't do, despite it being better in the objective sense. But there is no objective good and there is no objective better.
That's right.
Ultimately.
Yes. Well, and I think what I love about you saying it, sharing it that way, is that I think there's almost like an indoctrination in the food culture and culinary culture of like, this is this and this is that, like. And there's these standard notes of like coffee notes, like for example, if we're going to talk about wine, coffee notes, cherry notes, like earthy, dry, this and that. And I actually love the having a much more colorful, broad spectrum of words and feelings to describe what you're encountering when you're eating or drinking something, because yes, part of it is subjective. And something might like trigger a memory for you. Right? Like, oh, that reminds me of, reminds me of like for example, this, I actually thought about it and then I drank it. This actually reminded me of, I don't know why, I'm just going to say it, like a baby grasshopper. There you go. That's what we're like at the tea house, and me personally, and my whole approach to tea, that's what I'm here for, is like, what's this tea like? For you, it's like a baby grasshopper. What does that mean to you? It doesn't really matter what it means to you. The experience is like that. That this tea can evoke that for you is what makes it powerful and beautiful and enjoyable and fun, and that it can feel playful to you. Playful like a baby grasshopper, you know? And who knows why that image came into your head. But it's what you experience when you drink the tea. And so the tea is giving you this thing. And I think that we really honestly do ourselves a disservice in America, in the West, where when we try to cut that subjective personal part out of the tasting experience, because just like
it can help you to taste a note, articulating it. There, you can also restrict yourself.
I know. So
psychologically restrict yourself from those deeper experiences when you're so hyper focused. And a lot of times there's a self-consciousness aspect because
100%.
there is this
hierarchical
kind of gatekeeping thing around. Oh, you can't taste the crushed granite in this. Well, you're not a very good, sommelier person.
Yeah, right.
And,
well, and it's like democratizing, or actually giving it back to the people, which in story, there's, granted, with vocabulary, we have a dictionary now, but in story, it's so much more like, different strokes of a painting, making 10 people can make the same image, but it looks different because our strokes are different and color choices are different, etc. But it is the same image.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we only get a fuller picture if we all share.
That's right.
We all share that together, and that's part of the communion of food and drink.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the cool thing about the tea house and the tea table is that we're all sharing the same thing. We're all sharing the same pot of thing. It's not that we're all sitting at the bar with our own drinks or at the coffee shop with our own drinks. We're sharing right now. This, and say in Chinese, they say 一期一会 in tea culture. It actually comes from a Japanese saying 一期go一期a from Japanese tea culture.
Kind of Japanese,
One time, one meeting. 一期一会 is the Chinese translation of that. But it's very relevant to Chinese tea culture also. And you see it all over China now. They're into it. And it means one time, one meeting. And the idea being that this sip of this pot of this tea is the only time that you'll ever experience this ever.
That's right.
Every cup is different, every steeping is different. You could buy this tea, bring it home, make it again, and you won't be drinking the same tea. One steeping to the next, you're not drinking the same tea. There's only this one experience, and it is completely unique. But we're all having it. We're all sharing it. And in fact, us sharing it is part of that unique experience.
I was going to say that it's that one moment. And if everyone is also, sort of giving their perspective, it's like sitting around and seeing the different. It's only complete if everyone is sharing what their experience is, and then we have the fullness of that moment,
which is a hyper Asian perspective because the
collective,
and the collective around food.
Yes,
the collective around sharing something together, and that spirit of, like you said, wanting to feed people, wanting to give people drinks, wanting to share with people. In China, you can't walk down the street. You meet someone, they will give you a cigarette. If you're a man, they'll give you a cigarette. It's like there's a joke in China. There's a joke. They say in America they shake hands. In Japan they bow. In China you offer someone a cigarette, and that's like our cultural. That's our cultural greeting.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
There's another one that I like a lot. I'll just do this real quick. In Japan, they have Ultraman. In America, they have Superman. In China, they have Chengguan, which is like the little cops that are not cops that go chase away like food vendors and stuff and just like do all of the stupid bullshit stuff that actually nobody, does all the stuff that like real cops don't do, and they don't have guns, and they're just kind of like a nuisance in general. But that's their like national superhero. It's very
so funny. Oh my gosh,
joke.
I love that. Yes, exactly. And just to like contrast it with being in Europe or actually even like I had friends who were more Western tea house connoisseur type people. The experience is different. Like, you can go have tea, but it has the list, the description of what the flavors are, but there's not really like everybody gets their own pot. You drink from your own pot, you pick your tea, and there is no communion around it.
And also I don't ever want my own thing at any establishment.
Right.
I don't I go to places and I'm like, I'm supposed to pick one dish and then you're gonna pick your dish and we're not gonna share.
It's like family style.
What is the point? What is the point of that?
Exactly.
I could have come here by myself. Also, you can pour this on this tortoise here.
Yay. He's a cutie.
This next one's called Cloud Forest. Oh, I'll tell you about this tea because I didn't tell you about it at the beginning. That was maofeng. It's a green tea.
Oh, right.
It's from Mountain in Sichuan province, which is very near where I used to live. So this tea is very near and dear to my heart because my adoptive hometown of Chengdu, which is where I lived when I lived in China, this is what people love to drink there. This is like the everyday, and it's interesting, your guests come from out of town, you serve them a more expensive green tea also from Mountain called zhuyeqing, but they don't drink it themselves. The locals drink maofeng, and they actually like it better because it's more robust tasting.
Is it a higher altitude there?
Omei Mountain is high altitude.
Okay.
It is.
Because that's the green that I saw was more mountain. Yeah.
Tea, that's just the rule for tea. High altitude is always better. I mean, there's a point at which you can't grow tea above it.
Of course.
But generally speaking, for a given mountain where tea is grown, the higher on the mountain, the better the tea is going to be. And Omei Mountain is tall. It's one of the sacred Buddhist mountains of China. Yeah. If you want to climb it, you can climb it. There's a bunch of steps. There's like tens of thousands of steps. And you just climb the heck up to the top.
See, so that makes sense to me because remember I was saying like the food, the actual real flavor of food can vary based on what region, on what the water is like, the sun, the heat, the humidity, etc. So being higher on the mountains, actually the water is pure. The spring water is pure because it's from the snow. So that's so cool because then it also collects the nutrients coming down to where the tea is being grown. And
pollution, it doesn't get up there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
right.
The pollution is in the cities.
Yes.
You don't have cities on the mountains because you can't build on the mountains. You can build one little house at a time and they're on stilts, on the mountain.
Yeah.
And so, because it's steep. And so you can't really do much else on the mountain. You can't do industry. You can't do a lot of commerce.
No.
You don't have big dwellings. It's hard to get there. And you don't have a lot of pollution being produced there, and the pollution being produced in the cities doesn't climb all that way up there.
That makes sense.
And so
it is. It did sit lower, almost like a fog.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm.
Okay. When I was actually the first pass on like the fragrance of it, almost like confused me because I'm gonna say it and I feel like it's wrong, but I don't think so because that's what I keep smelling now. It almost smells. Oh my gosh, I'm so like this might sound. It actually smells like ham or bacon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it has that sweeter meat, almost smoked smell, like slightly smoked.
I can see it. I can see it.
Or maybe it's more like the aged ham. Yeah, but it's the sweeter. With like the
We got a whole picnic going on. We got fried chicken. We've got ham.
This is a meal. This is a full meal deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so now.
And the Chinese word for the liquid part of the tea is tang soup. That's how you say cha tang is the tea soup. So in English they call it the liquor.
Right.
Which doesn't make any sense because it's not distilled. It has nothing to do with liquor. Although I guess you call what's inside an oyster liquor and you say pot liquor. So they like to use that word. But it's not in Chinese. They call it soup because tea is soup. It is leaves in hot water.
That's right.
That is soup.
It is. That's true.
What else is that? Nothing but soup.
Yeah, this one definitely has what people would call more earthy. Not as heavy though. It does have bitter notes to it because it sits on top of my tongue. Oh, that was different. Okay, hold on.
And don't forget to exhale through your nose. Oh yeah, slurping.
Okay, yeah. So the sides of your mouth actually have the sour receptors, and this actually had some sour notes, which surprised me because I smelled sweet first, and then it was bitter, and then the sour, which pretty much are the, and then if we had salty and sweet, then it would be all the flavors, but...
That almost makes me want to put salt in it.
Right?
Putting salt in
that
tea
would
is a
actually
thing.
make it very umami because that salt would give it that additional texture.
We might have to have like salty tea day at the tea house one day where we just put salt in all the tea.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now that you said that, I'm like, oh, I do want salt in it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay. Yeah.
We could call it salty cha. That would be the
salty
name of the
cha.
event, salty cha.
They have salty sakura tea in Japan, which
they have the salt cured sakura petals.
Not my favorite, but I understand what. Yeah.
And it's an herbal tea. It's an herbal tea because you get all kinds. You get into herbal tea, all bets are off. You could have anything. You could take a freaking pineapple and cut a slice of pineapple out of it and put boiling water on it and make pineapple tea.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so this one, the visuals I keep getting, it's so interesting. It's just, letting my mind do it, but almost like fresh wood.
Yeah.
Like, and the visual I got was someone planing, like a plank of fresh wood, and the smell from that.
Well, I'll say this: it was stored in a cedar-lined room.
I was actually thinking cedar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was stored in a cedar-lined room. So that's really very perceptive.
Yeah. I really was. I almost said cedar, but I was like,
I get grapey raisiny, like grape skin, kind of like that sweet fragrance, like raisins, that like sweet fragrance, and then that astringent, like grape skin, red grape skin on the tongue.
That bitterness.
Yeah. And
actually, I think it is that darker purple. Because those skins are like tougher and a little bit more bitter.
the ones where you squeeze the grape out of the skin. I love those.
Yeah.
I miss the produce in China a lot. I would miss all the different kinds of fruits.
And we don't get to. That won't survive a boat.
I know. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Definitely, the woodiness is what stays with me the longest.
Yeah, woody. That was my first tasting note. It was like woody. There's woody notes,
and that was the bitter note. I think that when I first got it, but then I was really surprised with that sour. Like it did throw me off. Actually, that's why I was like, wait, what? Like, let's taste this again. So
for me, that's like that grapey, raisiny part. Like the inside of the grape has that sourness. The outside of the grape has the stringency.
Yeah.
And then there's the ham.
No, that has not gone away. And maybe that's also the other thought I had, but I've had it. I was thinking of the Spanish ham.
Iberico.
Yes. I was thinking about that, but that has more of a smokiness to it.
I haven't had that. I want to have that so bad.
Yeah.
I love pork, just any kind of pork. I think it's just that. The list of the 100 most nutritious foods, the BBC or the World Health Organization, someone did this very authoritative list, the 100 most nutritious foods.
Really?
And there's like walnuts and like, ocean fish and things like that, things that you'd expect. But somewhere on there, pretty high up, is a lard, pork fat. And it's the only terrestrial animal product on this list. There's sea creatures, and then there's a bunch of plants.
Nutritious.
One of the 100 most nutritious foods, and no one said anything about it. It was just like snuck on by. Lard, one of the most nutritious foods. All these scientists agree it's like number 45 on the list. Anyways, that's definitely a tangent.
Now I'm gonna have to look up that list.
I know. Y'all at home, look it up.
Yeah, I know. Look it up. Now I want to like see what a TCM person would say about that list.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they would be like, I would throw out that whole list. And then here's mine. So, yeah. Cedar plank, huh? There you go.
Yeah, cedar. See, a whole cedar room. That's how they see it. And so this is a white tea. Okay. Cloud Forest is a 2015 Gongmei. We just got this. It's one of my favorites right now. And it's a Gongmei, which is like a high grade of what's called shomei, which means longevity eyebrow. It's the leafiest grade. I know, it's a great name. It's the leafiest grade of Fuding white tea, which is where this is from. This is from Fuding in Fujian in the east of China.
Okay.
And the reason they call it longevity eyebrow is because the buds look fuzzy, like a silver needle,
Whoa,
and they're like these thin, fuzzy buds, and they're white, and then they're set against mostly these dark leaves, and so when you see them, it looks like a white eyebrow.
Oh, that's so fun!
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. So shomei means longevity eyebrow, and then the higher grades of shomei get called gongmei, which means tribute eyebrow, because it's just like a higher grade. It's got more buds. So this is a gongmei from 2015. So it's an aged tea. It's a cake of tea. It's a being. You break it apart, and it's. The saying for white tea is 1 year tea, 3 years medicine, 7 years treasure. And so this tea is 9 years old now. So it's a very like rich, well-aged, mature white tea.
Yeah, so that's maybe where the Iberico ham, that smoked aged.
Aged quality. Wow, nice. Wow. I like doing it this way. I'm glad we did. I don't think this was part of the plan to do it like this, to not introduce the tea, but it definitely works.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we have this pretty tea.
It is gorgeous.
Yeah. Thank you, Echo, for steeping these teas in advance for us.
Yes. Oh, the color actually reminds me of Scotch, but like a bit more orangey. Has that golden undertone to it. So do the other ones also have the hairs, or is it just?
Really just green and white teas where you see a lot of that. This one you'll see a little bit. You can see a little bit. And you'll see it in red teas also. Really, it depends on how buddy the teas are. So like this one should have had some. Amongst all those little leaf fragments.
I see it.
Yeah, you can see there's a lot of it in this one because that's that gongmei. It's got a lot of buds.
Okay.
And this one does not. So that's very perceptive. And without any spoilers, this tea is not made from the buds. This tea is made from the fully mature leaves that are completely open. So also very perceptive.
Yeah. Well, the clarity of it, part of the.
I'm excited about this. Oh yeah, nice job with this one, Echo. It's that's really good.
Interesting. Okay, So on fragrant. So I'm just gonna say what I'm feeling.
Always.
I actually get dried orange, citrus, rind notes in the smell.
That's good.
But like it's not like citrus. It's more like the dried version,
right?
Like what the teas
Yep.
are made of.
Yep, exactly. Definitely get that.
Oh, very different. Okay. This one is very like calm, settling for me. Like I could have this in the evening as I'm just trying to wind down for the night. At least for me.
I definitely feel it all the way through my body. For me,
I feel like there's like a resonance. Yeah. And I think maybe that's what it was. It's like it was just instantly I can feel the chi of it. And it's almost like my body is like right after
and like rooting kind of down. That's what I felt like this descending, slow rolling descending sensation all the way down to the bottom of my feet and then all the way into the ground.
You're right, yeah. And I do actually, compared to the other teas, maybe it's more full bodied in a different way, but like I actually feel it down my esophagus. And okay. Let me see flavor wise. But yeah, like it was like I felt the chi of the tea first, like before anything. So
that's what's more prominent, honestly. Like that's what's more prominent than the taste and the smells. Tea is so subtle. It's so subtle. It's the most subtle. It's more subtle than coffee, more subtle than wine, more subtle than beer. The only thing more subtle than tea is water. And so when you do taste it, if you're really focused on just the taste and the smells, you're going to be looking for them.
That's true.
And hunting for them.
Yeah, you're like going through your catalog of like words that like, that tastes like this. You know?
Right, and it's almost this like, almost like competitive performative thing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I think that, being able to relax into that feeling, that's much more prominent and much more the reason why we consume tea than the flavor and the fragrance. And I think that is not as commonly experienced when you haven't been introduced to it from Asian perspective, from in the case of this tea house, from a Chinese perspective, when you're being introduced to tea and you're putting it alongside things like coffee and whiskey and everything, and you just use the same paradigm to discuss it, you're missing the greater part of what makes it what it is. Which is why I think you don't see tea as represented in the West, alongside things like coffee and beer, is because so much of the value and experience of tea isn't accessible to the standard narrative that we use to talk about food.
That makes sense. I think I totally am aligned with that. Okay, so the notes I'm getting, definitely a woodiness, but different than the white tea. So this one also has almost a stone, like gives me this like minerally. It's very, and I was trying to search my brain, not like I go around licking or sucking stones, but like.
Hey, what you do is your business. As long as it's,
but it has like, I almost like had the image of like granite, like raw granite, and wondered if like the water goes over the mountains and picks up the minerals.
Yes, definitely. This is a Phoenix oolong. I'll go ahead and disclose something about this. It's an oolong. It's a Phoenix oolong. And the Phoenix Mountains like the Wui Mountains, are a little bit more craggy, rocky. They're not these like thick, deep soil, especially, and you do see a lot of like exposed rock and like rock walls.
That makes
in
sense.
The mountains.
I mean, I feel like I taste that it's not earthy like the soil. It's earthy like the stone, like of a mountain.
Yeah.
Because I do, when I hike, I love drinking the spring water, that's just naturally flowing. Not everyone does that. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, if you're not doing that, like, why are you in the mountains?
Some people
carry your own water.
Ew, I love that algae. I'm like, what? This is like...
The algae cleans it. Well,
I know,
it depends on the algae.
Pure spring water, pure spring water. So I love that because every mountain tastes different.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So what you're tasting, besides our water, is the Phoenix Mountains in eastern Guangdong province. Yeah.
I also I feel the clouds around. It's almost like a mystical.
Yeah. Clouds, clouds are essential to growing good tea. Altitude, clouds, clean environment, the age, of the plants, those are all factors that go into the quality of the tea. And so clouds and mist is the only really specific meteorological factor that is in this list of four classic things that make a good tea.
I almost wonder if it's more humid there because it's
very humid.
Yeah, I was like, I taste that the presence of humidity.
It's misty. Funny. It's foggy. It's misty.
Yeah, I taste that more in this. I definitely have it. It has a bitter. It left definitely. I feel like the lasting taste or on my tongue is the bitter notes, but it is very much minerally. It does have a slight sweetness, but I'm trying to figure out how to describe the sweetness of it. It's not sweet like the sticky rice, puer. It's not like that. The sweetness is, I think it reminds me more of the natural sweetness of snow pea leaves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's you definitely can taste that this is from the leaves, but the natural underlying that low sweetness of snow pea leaves is what it gives me a little bit, because I can feel that on sort of the bottom of my tongue.
And that, so we talk in tea, we have some specialized vocabulary for talking about tea. And huigan is one of these words, means returning sweetness. And what it describes is this lingering aftertaste on your tongue. Like you described it going all the way down your esophagus.
Yes.
In the throat, it's called the houyuan, but in the mouth, it's called the huigan. And the huigan is bitter and sweet.
Yes.
So that lingering film of bitterness that is also sweet, like snow pea leaves at the same time, that's called the huigan. And this tea has very strong huigan. Actually, that last one did too. Had a very strong huigan. But now you're feeling it down your esophagus. When here it's called the houyuan, here it's huigan. But and then what you feel in your body is called the tigan. So
so cool.
when you feel something in your body, So then that's where Chinese tea culture does have vocabulary that we lack in the West.
100%.
Is describing these deeper feelings, these that go beyond the five senses, these more complex, more subtle feelings
even just what you encounter on the tongue.
Yeah.
Right, because the sensation, and like you said, just you can feel it in your tongue and your esophagus, and if you are able to, I guess you can say, listen to your body. I feel like that, and then maybe I think that's another thing to tell people is to not be even people could have seen my hesitation of I smelled him, but just giving yourself permission to what's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yes,
absolutely. Right? And maybe that's what it is being less cerebral and more letting your brain communicate visually or just the first thing that comes to mind. And that permission is what's going to help people really expand the vocabulary around it. Yeah. But maybe also it's almost asking your body of because we are so associated with taste around the tongue. Yeah. And it's more ask what are you getting from your throat area? What are you getting from your body?
Yeah. getting less cerebral and more somatic, getting into the
body. There we go. Yes.
And tea guides us into the body. That's like what it does. You know, tea takes us and it guides us from this external smell to this very familiar taste to maybe less familiar sensations, like a cooling feeling in your throat or something moving through your body, a sensation of something moving or expanding your body. Those are a little bit less familiar, but there's always something to be experienced there. We're just too busy usually being distracted to experience
100%. Yeah. Well, and then another piece about the somatic experience is that, we were talking our pre-chat, and
really
I was
good,
saying
guys.
how, I love, at least what I've encountered mostly in the Eastern cultures, is that, just the understanding of how our bodies, we're from the earth, and being able to holistically think about, like, we're eating things from the earth as well, and so it's important to know where things come from, and I feel like it's almost like our body already has tuning forks in a way of things that it would recognize that you may not have vocabulary for, or maybe you've never even listened to that. And in addition is what I love, I think I'm just kind of borrowing from like a book, and it's not the entire premise, but there was a book I read called Eat Right for Your Blood Type. I don't know if you remember. That was like a trend back then.
I'm familiar with the blood type diet hypothesis,
But it talked, the basis of it was saying that it could be what your like DNA, historical heritage DNA of what land you're from and what your people group would have eaten or had to drink and etc. That might be better for you, right? Not just from like a blood type standpoint. And I almost wonder if there are there is memories that are coded into our DNA that are not just traumatic, but also good memories. Yeah. And tea and food and flavor, smell, fragrance, all of it, especially fragrance, that's very associated with memory, can trigger something ancient in us. And to be able to articulate that without fear is, I think, going to be really important in the conversation around tea, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I like what you said, giving people permission. That's what I spend a lot of time doing at the tea house, is giving people permission to just enjoy themselves and not feel like they need to know anything, not feel like they need to understand, not feel like there's expectations on them. And it's interesting, you're right, it does bring us into this, mindfulness, tea brings us into this mindfulness of our bodies and state of focus, and it doesn't require any discipline.
Not at all.
Like meditating also gets you into this state of internal, being in touch with the self beyond the senses, beyond the frontal lobe, you know what I mean? But it requires discipline and dedication, and it's uncomfortable.
Yes, and we just don't do it all the time.
And we just don't do it all the time. But when something that you enjoy can bring you that kind of experience, can bring you to that kind of place, then it becomes it's not a chore anymore. It's an indulgence. It's a pleasure. You get to indulge in it. Yeah. And I think that's something that I always found really exciting about tea, and in the tea house, giving people permission to don't worry about what you taste, don't worry about what you smell, just be present for the experience. Some people are always asking me, what's your favorite tea? And I'll say, I like Pu'er is my favorite kind of tea. Or I'll say like an individual tea. And then people always ask me, well, why is it your favorite? And I say, because I like it the best. Oh. And that's the real answer.
About as subjective as you can get.
Right, and that's the real answer is like, I might not, it's like being in love. If you ask, why do you love your partner? Well, if you can say things that you love about them, but if you take those things away, do you not love them anymore? Like what you love is the person. There is a holistic person there that defies description and articulation and categorization. And that's the soul of the person. That's a really important part of the person. And that's what we love about that person. The face could burn off, they could be confined to a hospital bed for the rest of their lives, and you can still love that person. Yes. That won't change your love for them.
Exactly.
And everything all their attributes could be, changed or taken away, and you could still love that person. Well, what do you love? You just love the person, not the things about them. And that's how it is, for tea, and again, food, or your granddad's favorite whiskey. It's like, what do you love about it? It's not it is not something that I can articulate what I love about it, but the love is real, and the feeling that it evokes in me is real and sincere and authentic, and is not something that I can post on Instagram. You know, it's not something that I can, you know, make a TikTok about. It's just for me. It's just me. It's my life, my experience, and here it is.
So there's a Korean word called chong, and maybe there's a Chinese equivalent, or you know, a lot of Korean has like Chinese roots. But chong, what you're describing, is what it sounds like, and chong is like a deep connection that you have with somebody or a place or something, and it's like so visceral. And you know, some people may liken it to like a soul tie or a soulmate bond, but that depth of love, that depth of connection, that chong that you have with your favorite tea is not necessarily going to be the same experience as even if somebody else had the same bond, right? So that is a very personal thing. But also it becomes really communal if you can share that. Because someone may not have that association, but your love for said person, said product, etc., and the way you describe it just really brings that to life in a different way than just someone says, oh, I just taste woodiness in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And from that last tea, I mean, I had some notes that I thought of. I was like, okay, what are some notes so that people have words? I got like some passion fruity notes, I got some like tropical fruit notes on the exhale, especially on the fragrance. And then the tannic nature
it
was
very
also
tannic,
like fruit, had that fruit kind of tannicness, tropical fruit tannic quality. Its name is Gold Thread Honey Orchid. So it's honey orchid is the cultivar, and that is famous for being fruity and having this very like sweet, honey and orchid notes. And for us, always comes out as having this like tropical fruit kind of profile. And I got a little bit of like brown sugar in that one also. Like it's a roasted tea. It's roasted with charcoal.
Yep, definitely
and
roasted.
It's not a heavy roast. It's the goal of the roast is not to make it taste roasted. The goal of the roast is to not make it taste roasted, but also not make it taste raw. There's this point at which the tea would taste raw, too much chlorophyll, too much. They call it the taiyang way, the sunshine flavor. And it's like an poorly cured tea. It's tea that wasn't fully cured, wasn't fully finished. And you want to cook that away, but you don't want it to get to the point where you're tasting the roasting, like coffee, for
example.
Char. You don't want to taste char, you don't want to taste carbonization, you don't want to taste caramelization, you don't want to taste wood. You just want the tea to be sealed and finished, because originally it's a preservation technique. So you want to do it enough to preserve it, but not enough to the point where you're fundamentally altering the base flavor. And so that roast is there, the charcoal is there, but it is a little bit, it's not, you don't want it to be charcoal forward where you're like, oh, I taste charcoal. There's other teas that they're like that, and that's fine. But
So that makes sense, because when I was saying the dry, I was like orange, citrus, mandarin orange tea. That was the kind of fruit note, but it wasn't like the citrus. So so I can associate with the fruity. It does have that rolling sort of honey flavor around the tongue. It definitely has that woody, but like what I was saying was that sort of stone, the mineral granite sense, like from probably the water, I'm assuming. So fascinating. Also, like just the image I'm getting from this is, and you told me that it was a phoenix, but what I had kept seeing was like almost like maybe it was the phoenix, but she was just doing this around me.
A bird.
Yes, a bird.
You saw that before I mentioned that it was a phoenix oolong? Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
So when I felt it through my body, but then I kind of remember I said it was coming. So I felt it like almost like sitting on my head and like putting wings around me. Oh, bless you. Yeah.
I'm allergic to phoenixes, so when you start talking about them, phoenix down, it's like, it's okay.
She was present. Yeah. So that's so cool that you're like phoenix. I was like, oh, I should have just shared before.
It's wild. No, it's seriously, people say crazy stuff, because I teach classes and do workshops where the goal is to get in touch with these more subtle aspects of the tea. And I don't, just like I'm doing now, I don't tell them what the tea is. I don't tell them what they're supposed to feel. We kind of guide them through the feeling of the tea, through these things like the huigan and the hoyun. Okay, I'm good. If you rub your eyes, it'll stop you from sneezing.
No.
Or if I do that, it will. I don't know.
I'm going to try it next time.
Yeah, next time you need to sneeze, you can rub your eyes.
Okay.
Not that sneezing, usually you want to sneeze, but it's a trick.
Yes. That's so interesting. And it felt like, I don't know, some older. So just, older, settled. But that's crazy.
It's an old cultivar.
I had this image of the bird just doing this.
Yeah, it'll be like a tea called Dragon Well, and people will be like, I saw a dragon. And
that's
it's
so
like,
crazy.
okay, well, they didn't know that.
Right.
They didn't know that, or it'll be crazy. People have these images, which is crazy because they don't know. Mm-hmm. And so all I can think is that there's some kind of resonance between this place, because they are called the Phoenix Mountains. It's a Phoenix oolong because it's a place called Fenghuangshan. And they gave them that name for some reason, So maybe there's some aspect of the land that this tea was grown in that has the spirit of the Phoenix in it, right?
Yeah, the spirit and the story.
Exactly. And same with Dragon Well. They call it Dragon Well because there's a natural spring there that has these kind of coils of vapor that rise up like dragons. And they named it Dragon Well.
Wow.
And I've served that tea to people. They don't know anything about it. It could be their first or second time ever drinking Chinese tea, and they'll be like, wow, I saw a dragon. I'll be like, funny thing about that, it's called Dragon Well. They had no idea.
Oh my gosh.
And and also the degree to which a given tea will produce the same archetypal image in sometimes dozens of people who have never met, who will never meet, across time. I've been doing this for years and years, what I mean? Across time, you got 5 people in the same group all saying the same thing, but then you've got people saying the same thing about that particular tea for years, again and again. And I'm not recording any of this data, but it'd be cool to do a study where you actually did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a food and drink, and sharing it is a spiritual experience.
It should be. It should be. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's just not everyone has, what's the best way to put it? Tuned into that. Right? It could be a spiritual experience with you and just the tea sitting by yourself, looking out the window, but the communion with it. And I love that. I love that the dragon and the phoenix. I saw the phoenix.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's wild.
Well, I know what this one is already. So.
So obviously earthy.
But
again,
it's super sweet.
Term. Very sweet, yeah. It's very
I was really surprised when I first sipped.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
Oh, yeah. I think some people are afraid of darker teas like this. They think immediately that it's going to be really strong and bitter. But it's not.
It's not bitter.
It's actually very smooth and light and sweet. But definitely the earthy, it's very prominent, but it's pu'er. So you're going to get that.
Shu pu'er, it's manhua shu. And it is sweet. It's sweeter than nanhua tea. We started, Li Shuyin left Nanhua Mountain, moved to Manhua. He still makes Nanhua Mountain teas, which is all we had from him for the first 9 years or whatever.
Wow.
But then his house burned down. He moved to Manhua nearby. He's fine.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a whole ass thing. Yeah, it was a whole thing. But it's good. And he moved to Manhua and he started making Manhua teas also. He still makes Nanhua teas. But he makes Manhua teas also. And Manhua is not a famous tea producing place. But they do have tea there and it ends up being really good. It's actually very sweet. It's much sweeter than the Nanhua teas. And Nanhua teas are already, as pu'er goes, they're already in the kind of sweeter part of the range. But the Manhua teas are quite sweet, and they across the board, red tea, white tea, sheng pu'er, shu pu'er, they all have this sweetness to them.
I wonder what was grown there before. Because,
there's pine trees that grow there now. And there was tea grown there before. And
now when you say pine tree, I instantly can taste that coniferous, yes.
Almost like the pine duff. You get the pine duff.
Yeah.
Because the tea is growing in pine duff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely, because I was it's not, I almost said it's not leafy, earthy, green like some of the other ones. But when you said the pine trees, that's the flavor. Because I grew up in a place we had lots of pine trees. And so every morning you just smell that fragrance is, for me also it's childhood, right? So, but
Pu'er always reminds people of childhood in some capacity. That's like the number one tea that it's probably the tea that's most likely to evoke like a visual or memory-based response from people. Pu'er. People often say it reminds them of their parents, their grandparents. Super common for grandparents. Super common.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then also parents and then childhood and being in water in childhood, being in a canoe, standing in the lake, feeling the waves like lap against your legs. Like, there's a lot of those very, very common responses for pu'er, chou pu'er, the fermented pu'er especially.
So another note I'm getting, which makes no sense because it's pine, but bamboo, almost like have you ever eaten food that's been steamed inside bamboo? Yeah. So that resonant bamboo flavor,
that pithy, that pithy woody kind of taste.
Yeah, it wasn't wood like the cedar.
Right.
This is like a sweeter, but it has that bamboo.
More yellow.
Yes, taste, exactly. Yeah, more yellow. Yeah. More, definitely has. It has like a slight tinge of. What's the best way to describe it? It's not quite sour. But it's another one. Because I taste the sweetness. That was first. Then I taste that woodiness. I taste the pine. But there is, maybe it's from like the pine.
There's the classic tasting note for chou pu'er and fermented teas in general, but especially chou pu'er is petrichor. Which is the smell of the earth when it rains.
There you go.
And what I'm realizing now is that you get that a lot more when it's hot.
Yeah.
That drinking this cold, that petrichor fragrance is very much evaporated.
That's one thing with pu'er. Like, I feel like you can taste, like, it tastes totally different hot and
absolutely.
cold.
Yeah, completely different. And the sweetness really comes out a lot when it's cold like this, which is really interesting. I mean, I love drinking cold chou pu'er. I would drink it a lot when I was doing like farmers markets and stuff. That I would have a bunch of like really thick chou pu'er that I would let get cold and I'd mix it with topo chico. It was great.
Oh really?
Yeah, I call it chapo tico.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's good.
Oh, okay.
This is the right consistency. This is strong enough that you could pour some topo in here and get it enough to the point where it's bubbly and it's got that sweetness and it's like nice markets.
Oh yeah.
It's like just like drinking Coca-Cola because it has that astringency like Coca-Cola does. Coca-Cola has that astringent quality. But yeah, it's awesome. So next time we'll bring salt and topo.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. I would totally, the bubbles actually, I wonder would bring out some of
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. This one makes me, I don't know, it has this almost like slight, not fully, but like the edge of giddy for me. Like this tea, I feel like is great for, at least for me, and the feeling I'm getting. It's like sitting with a friend, you're like bestie, catching up, and it's all the good feels around that connection, around that like excitement, the buzz. Maybe it has a like slight buzz.
So the kind of the flavor wheel that I do with people for the way tea makes you feel is obviously there's an infinitude of ways that you can feel.
Yes.
But as far as trying to ground it in the different chemicals in tea that induce a feeling, like caffeine, like L-theanine, theobromine, EGCG, epigallocatechin 3-gallate. So like these chemicals that induce a sensation, we talk about caffeine is stimulating, theanine is focusing. There's more to it than that, but theobromine is euphoric, which is what you're describing, that like
there you go,
euphoria, that giddiness, that joyful kind of feeling.
Exactly.
And then EGCG is calming because it's a GABA agonist, and so you have this kind of spectrum. That's kind of like the little mini flavor wheel of feelings. That
I feel like I just went through the whole wheel.
I know, and it's interesting because we went from grass to wood to rock to soil.
Wow. Very
interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. And leaving on a high note here.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that at the end of the day, for someone who's watching this and who wants to be able to talk about tea when they're drinking it, I think that, what it feels like from just our conversation, and as people who are deeply connected to our cultural heritage, our culinary cultural heritage, and the degree to which that experience of sustenance, the sensual experience of sustenance, is also a spiritual experience. Allowing yourself to not have good words.
Right.
Knowing that it's okay to not have a way to articulate this, and that it's not necessarily what it means to be good at tea or knowledgeable at tea or to be a good tea person.
Right.
Is not necessarily to be able to articulate. Some people are good at that and some people are not, and it's okay. It doesn't detract from your ability to enjoy and be satisfied by the experience just because you might not have this verbal language. And letting yourself be creative. If it smells like ham, let it smell like ham. And don't worry about whether people are going to be offended by that. We're never offended. You'd have to, someone would have to say something that was on its own offensive to be offensive as far as tasting notes for tea. You know what I mean? And it's all about people's personal experiences. And when someone's enjoying something, how much value they get out of that thing is really going to be down to their personal experience and not what someone else says it's supposed to be like.
Right. And also enhanced by contributing, everyone sharing, and almost like filling out the rest of the picture from the perspective you're sitting. So like for people who are maybe intimidated about what, like, I don't have vocabulary or I've never really done this before, it's that... and this is a very Asian mindset, but if you are not contributing, whatever that thing that you're afraid of saying, you're almost like detracting from what the flavor profile, the experience, from what other people can know and even grow zhang about the tea experience.
Yeah, I think that, expression is a really important part of tea. And I think that having the inclusive space for people to feel safe and feel welcomed and feel taken care of and like their presence is welcome no matter whether they're speaking or not,
that's right,
whether they're sharing or not, that gives people permission. And knowing that it's not this kind of elitist gatekeeping thing. No. It's just about enjoying something together and having that permission, knowing that we're together and we're enjoying this thing and that I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to perform in any way. My presence here is valuable and my perspective is also valuable. To whatever degree I want to share that or not is also valuable.
Yeah.
And that people want to hear it.
Food and drink and sharing that. And I love, I prefer sitting where it is round like this, right? Because it's vulnerable because yes, you are not like, they say that your hands are occupied with food and drink, not at your weapon, and your hearts are exposed. So already from an energetic perspective and just your posture you are in a vulnerable place.
Absolutely.
To receive, but also to share. And I love that it's, to have something honestly as approachable and really as common as tea, like, I feel like sometimes with wine culture or even scotch or whatever it is, it does become elitist, or you have to have more money to get the better quality stuff. And but whereas tea it's just every day. Tea is every day. And you can have incredibly high quality tea in the poorest parts of Asia.
Because you grow in it. Exactly. You can have world-class tea in your little farm and you don't have money to buy shoes, but you've got some really good tea because you grow it in your yard.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And so already from the origin of tea, it's meant for everyone.
It is. And like you said, whiskey, beer, wine, if you are not someone who drinks alcohol, that is not accessible to you. And there's a lot of people in the world, like observant Muslims, for example, are not supposed to drink alcohol. Same with observant Buddhists. There are people who, for various reasons, can't consume that. And the act of consuming together is this like hyper bonding. It is the essence of human bonding, like down to drinking your mother's breast milk. You know what I mean?
It is.
The essence of human bonding is sharing and sustenance together. And what's really cool, I think, about when you're looking at tea And the way that people sit around and consume together is that it is so acceptable because children can consume it, people from all different religions. And it's this act of, metaphorically breaking bread.
Yes.
People have used that term for so long, but you can't break bread anymore because people got gluten intolerances. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, exactly. So even if something as universal as food, which is the true sustenance, food is the true sustenance. And we just talked at length about how deep that bond is. But the problem is food's not inclusive.
No, not
because
anymore.
you got vegans and you got vegetarians, you got kosher, halal, you got keto, paleo, all these different things that will prevent, and all kinds of allergies prevent people from sitting and enjoying food together. Yeah. Same with alcohol. And one of the big circular things that I really love and enjoy personally is a hookah.
Yes.
Smoking hookah. Yeah. It's the same. It's very much like tea. We're sitting in a circle. We're spending hours doing it. We're all consuming the same thing together. Exactly. Yep. But and actually mate is a lot like that. A lot of tea because it's good for you. Hookah. What I love about hookah is that communal nature, but it's not good for you. No. So you don't want to do it a lot. And in a lot of places, it's a very male pastime. That's true. It's not necessarily like an all gender pastime, as much as it is like a male pastime. And so I think that there's something really special about it.
Very inclusive.
Well, I'd love for everyone watching this to know where to find you and how to enjoy your mochi donuts. Is there a word that we can use for that that's not just mochi donut?
So the name for it original is actually named by the city where it's from is Gyeongjuak.
All right.
Is the name of the donut. And I am actually in the process, I have been contemplating, do we just rename this? Because people are like, oh, you're like, and I'm like, actually, we're not. Right. Right. And people who try it are like, oh, you are so not. That's not the same as the other mochi donut kind of thing. So where to find us? We are on Bom Bakeshop, bombakeshop.com. Really active on Instagram and the social medias. We are pop-up only for now until we have our storefront ready, which, it's that, but it's also we're at the mercy of the permitting.
Oh yeah, no, I know about that. Yes. I was snapping. My fingers injured, so I can't actually snap. But that was not the money. This is the money. The snap. I was like,
snap. Yes. Yeah. And we do over 120 flavors a year.
Wow.
Yeah, we did 119 last year.
I don't know that I can think of 120 flavors of
stuff. I know, right? And I repeat them too. So,
wow.
And it's AAPI month, AANIHIPI.
It's long now.
No, it's super long.
Longer.
But we are 3 times a year. We have different Asian flavor collections, but we do an Asian flavor collection 3 times a year.
Wow.
And this month we're going to be doing that. So all the Asian flavors, which people come out of the woodworks for, we do it for also Lunar New Year, and for Harvest Moon and Mid-Autumn Festival. So come find us. Pop-ups Fridays, Saturdays, or during the events. Lunar New Year next time.
You'll be in a new spot.
We'll be in a new.
That's
right, because you'll be. Yes. I heard, which will be fun.
It's gonna be fun.
By that time, we'll have our storefront for sure. As well.
Maybe we'll even be neighbors. Who knows? Depending on where you end up being.
Yeah, but we'll keep doing stuff. And I love this conversation. I love it because it's us also sharing from our cultural heritage and our upbringing and something deeper than just, this is French cuisine. I'm not mocking it.
Right. And we're not French. I'm not French. So that I'd have no connection to that. But something, and I think something deeper than just like a 10-second reel. Something deeper than get your pork belly really crispy. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
The meaning behind these things that we enjoy so much and that we seek to experience so much, the deeper meaning and the way that it connects us as people. I think that's what makes all of food culture around the world, so powerful and meaningful.
100%, yes. And that's, and it's good, high quality, which we also super try to keep to quality over quantity. Because that's I love this. It's more it's for the people. Yeah, it's for the people. So
awesome.
Thank you,
Theresa, so much for being here.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time on Gong Fu Tea.